Hello and welcome to Spinster's Library. I'm Claudia and today I want to talk about Station 11, which is a novel by Emily St. John Mandel and it was published in 2014. Before I say anything else, I should mention that I read this book in April 2020, which is, really great timing for a post-apocalyptic novel centered around a deadly pandemic. So this is a bit of a weird one for me to be talking about because my memories of reading this novel are so very closely connected to the beginning of our very own global pandemic. April 2020 was a very strange time and you don't need me to tell you that. I do sometimes wonder if I would have connected to this book in the same way had I read it earlier. But either way, just bear that in mind during this review. So this is a post-apocalyptic novel set for the most part 20 years after a highly dangerous and rapidly spreading pandemic has wiped out most of humanity. We mostly follow a troupe of theatre performers as they make their slow journey around the Great Lakes, performing to the few survivors who have made a new life for themselves in this post-apocalyptic wasteland. This group travels and puts on plays, and they have a few other business ventures on the side, of course. Kirsten, who is the closest thing this book has to a protagonist, is one of the actors in the troupe, and we follow her story both as an adult and in flashbacks from the days before the global pandemic, the days leading up to it, where she is a child. There's an interesting disconnect between the now and the then in this book, and one that is characterized by a marked difference in tone. The current timeline, the post-apocalyptic wasteland, has a strangely peaceful quality to it. I say strangely peaceful because this is by no means a utopia. Quite the opposite. It's exactly the sort of lawless, violent, brutal environment that you're imagining. There's no technology at all, no comfort, no security. The fight for survival is real. When we see the flashbacks, on the other hand, we're thrown to the very beginning of this humanity-wiping crisis. The panic, the anger, the cluelessness about what's going on and what's going to happen, it's a very big contrast to the modern-day storyline. And you get a sense that in the 20 years between the two timelines, the world has settled from absolute panic into a status quo that's much calmer. This is actually one of my favorite tropes of post-apocalyptic and dystopian fiction, and one of the reasons that I love this whole genre so much. This is something that I'm going to call quiet survivalism. The idea of people having to rely on themselves and on each other in small communities to live on very limited resources. You can see it as the evil stepsister to cottagecore. I unashamedly love stories that include that sort of world building, and that goes from classics such as Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe or Mary Shelley's The Last Man, all the way to modern day dystopian and post-apocalyptic fiction. I'm exactly the sort of person who wouldn't survive a day in the apocalypse. And reading about people who do is comforting in a way that I probably shouldn't question any further. But anyway, getting sidetracked here, maybe I should at some point make a separate video about that trope. So Station 11 is driven by an exploration of this post-apocalyptic world. It's a very slow-paced novel that at times doesn't seem to be going anywhere. We get to know a whole cast of characters, both in the present and in the past timeline. Some of the characters you meet in the past, are going to die in the outbreak. Some are survivors and we see them in both timelines. Some we see just in the past, some we see just in the present. Some where you don't really realize that we do actually see them in both timelines until it's made clear in the text. The survivors that we see in the future timeline, or I guess the present day timeline, are 20 years older than they are in the flashbacks and shaped by those decades of hardship and survival. And there's quite a few characters where at first you're not entirely sure of their place in this story, of why they are in this book at all. A lot of this book feels like pulling at loose threads, many of the scenes, in particular the flashback scenes, read like disconnected vignettes. I personally love that style of book, that character exploration, though I can imagine that many readers will find this a bit too slow-paced and directionless. In the end, all of those loose threads, all of those characters we've been following throughout the story are tied in together. They are connected in a variety of ways. And it's nice and satisfying when you get to that bit. But I fully understand how readers who prefer more plot-driven books, more tightly written books, might get a little bit frustrated and lose patience with the story before they get to that point. But for me, the appeal really is in the world building, in the exploration of this space and in the way that people connect to each other in communities or outside of communities and just try and make it work. This is not a settled society yet. And in fact, throughout the book, you don't know if this is ever going to be a settled society or if these survivors are really just the last survivors of mankind, if their society is not in fact going to evolve into a more prosperous future, but instead just sort of fizzle out. Which, when I put it like that, sounds kind of depressing. The prose in Station 11 is appropriately poetic and beautiful to read. There's a lot of musing about the place of art in a world where survival is hard fought for day after day. We meet different artists in the book. Most of all, of course, the actors in the theatre group, but also musicians, writers, visual artists. And all throughout, the book has this theme, asks this question of whether art is as vital to survival as food and shelter. Which for me is a very interesting question and one that I enjoyed exploring through the medium of this story. I found those musings, that philosophizing, very enjoyable and fascinating. Found the writing absolutely dreamy, just really beautiful prose. And I liked that question about what survival means, about what makes a society, and about what, as a society, we deem important or not. And that's what a good post-apocalyptic novel does. It makes you think about the society that you live in right now. And I think during the COVID pandemic, we've seen the defunding of art and of these kinds of community events like theatre, like music. I think we've answered the question for ourselves about whether we think it's important or not. And I guess we'll see what the consequences of that are going to be. As I've said before, my experience of reading Station 11 was heightened by having read that in the early days of our very own pandemic. And that was no coincidence. I picked up this book in April of 2020 because in moments of crisis, I turn to stories either to distract me or to help me understand the world around me, which in a very meta sort of a way is exactly what this book is about. So this was my review for Station 11, and this is the final video in my 12 Decades of Christmas series, in which I reviewed 12 books from 12 decades, starting from 1900 up to the 2010s, in the 12 days leading up to Christmas. You can check out all of the videos now in the playlist linked in the description box. And if I plan ahead next year, maybe we'll do a slightly extended edition of that. 24 decades of Christmas. Where would I have to start to make that happen? I think in the 1790s or something. Anyway, that was it from me for this review and for this year. So I hope you have a nice holiday break and you get lots of wonderful books for Christmas. Thank you for watching. Bye.